I would like to point your attention towards certain aspects of the megalithic ruins of Jerash in Jordan, which seem to have been omitted from the pages of its history. Like, for example, the huge pieces of obviously older megaliths, on the top of which the known Romaic megaliths were erected. Older even than them, multi-leveled rock-cut apartments, as well as the origins of the couple of meters thick layer of clay mud into which the full thing got scrambled, possibly even a couple of times over and over again. Jerash was rather huge, by the way. Only the archaeological park, which consists of somewhat excavated ruins, is 1.5 kilometers long, full of impressive megaliths. Just compare the size of the stone blocks in relation to the people. And then outside the official archaeological park, it is megaliths as well. Kilometers of them. So we are told that all these magnificent buildings in Jerash started popping up during the Hellenistic period. Hellenistic referring to the alleged migration of Greek people all the way to northern India, they say. Decide how credible such a statement would be based on the archaeological findings of Greece at that time, showing that there was no Greek nation at all. The area was populated by decentralized tribes of shepherds, and the writing on the so-called ancient Greek temples was in a language unknown to the locals. More details in this video. How had the ancient Greek people packed their suitcases and come all the way to Jordan to teach the people how to build cities if they were unable to demonstrate it in their own crown jewel of the entire Hellenistic world, Athens, which has maybe only 10%, if not less, of the amount of ruins found in Jerash, and even that consists 90% of stones which have been placed there in very recent times by the restoration teams, so that they have something to show to the people when they actually come to see this great Athens we have all heard about. And as far as the second Hellenistic jewel, Sparta, I think the photos speak for themselves. Actually, it is way more likely the other way around, that the Hellenistic world learned how to build cities from the people from these regions here. Not only because here you find the masterpieces of the Hellenistic architecture, also because it does not appear out of the blue here, but rather as maybe a sort of natural continuation of the stone craftsmanship which was degrading from the times of the first layers of Baalbek probably. And by the way, speaking about Baalbek, which is merely 200 kilometers north of Jerash, both sites are amazingly rich in most intricate and fine stone carvings, sculptured carvings. And after looking at the fine leaves and other minor details, one is left wondering, but if they were hitting this with a chisel and hammer, why didn't the tips of the leaves in this carving, for example, break off? In a set book written down by Jane Roberts, luckily we have an explanation how did they do it in Baalbek, and maybe they used the same device here in Jerash, because the style is the same and the sites are similar and very near to each other. Here is why I consider this information an absolutely reliable historic source. And here are some very rare set quotes on the subject of the technology used in Baalbek. Quote, "The huge boulders were etched out. All of this was done in one way or another through the use of a knowledge of both coordination points in space and the use of sound. There were instruments that released sound and directed it in the same way the laser beam does with light. Drawings of some of these exist in primitive Sumerian cave renditions, but the drawings are misinterpreted. The instrument is taken for another. No one nowadays knows how to use these instruments. There are few of them in existence in your terms." End of quote. Set means our human terms. And the knowledge of the coordination points in space is relatively well described in his books, and also he does sometimes mention the use of sound as well. Quote, "Very sophisticated instrument was used," James said, "to soften the top layer of the stone so it was like a frosting, which could then be easily carved. The instrument might have done both the softening and the carving. Either that very instrument or another one was used to isolate the top layer of the stone from the rest of it so that it wasn't weakened. The sound wasn't audible to human ears. The shape of the instrument roughly resembled that of a pistol. All you had to do is aim it. That was used just for making the small stuff." End of quote. And another very common thing with Baalbek are these giant misplaced stones used and reused in, probably in this case, an attempt of historic reconstruction or addition. This column, for example. More examples of reused ancient columns. In Baalbek, they found such reused columns even below the rows of the biggest trilithons. And here in Jerash and almost all other sites that we visited in Jordan, the situation was not any less confusing. In Jerash, there was a ruin with odd orientation, and the official inscription on it said a mosque. And yet, it appeared to be below the Romaic-style ruins. And although the situation with the layers of building and rebuilding appears to be quite complex, one thing is sure. As everywhere else, the more ancient layers show much higher quality in terms of stonework. In the beginning, they had tools for cutting even big blocks like this. This is in Jerash. while in the most recent layers they simply resorted to small undressed stones. Or why even bother shuffling heavy stones around if you can live in a hut of rugs? And as far as the beautiful stones with fine carvings, they were just used for binding animals on them. According to official sources, the beautiful fine Romaic Jerash was destroyed in two consecutive major earthquakes in antiquity. Even if that was the case indeed, still, it doesn't explain the couple of meters thick layer of clay, which not only covers and embraces the ruins on the top, but also it seems that the ruins were scrambled while the flow of mud was devouring them. So, if the beautiful antique Jerash was destroyed by earthquakes, they must have been accompanied by something similar to mud floods. Similar to the mud floods as we know them nowadays, but yet not the same. Even here at the hilltop of Jerash, there are meters of clay. If we were dealing with something similar to the mud floods which we witness in modern times, then the lower areas below this hill should have been full with mud, and only the hilltop would have been sticking out of the mud, which is not at all what we actually find. We see just the opposite, more or less the same thickness of layer on the top of the hill and in the lower parts below it. Doesn't seem to be some sort of cultural layer as well, meaning people never swept their houses, and before they even knew it, they were full of clay up to the third floor. If you remember the set quotes about the sound devices with which the fine stone carvings were made, in the same channeling session, Seth also makes the remark that the over-enthusiastic use, as he formulates it, of such sound was the cause of the biblical flood as well. With the use of sound, people were drawing water from faraway lands and transporting it, sucking it to the arid areas to make them fertile, and that caused the great biblical flood. So maybe it caused all this clay to land over Jerash as well. After all, we see fine carvings here very similar to those of Baalbek, so they might have had these devices here as well. This scenario about the origin of the mud is neither a hypothesis nor my most likely explanation so far, or even a likely explanation. It doesn't qualify for any of that. It's almost pure fantasy, remotely related probably to the otherwise reliable account of the sound devices. But I decided to publish such things, which I would normally not do, because modern people expect quick and simple explanations for everything. They refuse to settle for anything else, and that's why they embrace and call hypotheses, sometimes even absolutely absurd explanations, which obviously do not correspond to reality. So I decided that under these circumstances, it would be even healthy for the situation to put forward new explanations with zero direct supporting evidence, just with the only qualification they have that at least they are not absurd and insane. Jerash, as pretty much all major ruins in Jordan, is built on older rock-cut bases, in which nobody seems to show much interest. It is not excavated, it is not mentioned anywhere, which I guess shouldn't be the case if we are really interested in our most ancient history. Examples of some steps which are still visible. Here the most impressive temple in the compound is built again, clearly on something rock-cut. Right angles are still visible here and there. Entrances to inaccessible rock-cut chambers, again very near to that huge temple. On the very hill on which the big megaliths of Jerash are located, at places where modern construction is going on, entire rock-cut apartments are being revealed when they dig. I wouldn't be surprised if they will simply destroy them, build modern stuff on the top without even taking photos of them. As we drove around Jordan, we saw many ruins, both rock-cut and remake, without any name. Usually they would get revealed when they dig for modern construction. They looked nameless and uncharted. The modern local people of Jordan have a very practical approach to life and don't show keen interest in abstract things like history. As far as I remember, I heard that they use ruins as a source for building material without any hesitation, and doesn't seem to be even illegal.